Okay, so what we want to do is create our first Scratch game. So we're going to make a maze game today. So if you're not familiar with Scratch, this is what it looks like. So over on the right hand side here, you've got your screen. So this is where all the program you're making will be taking place. Underneath is where all the sprites are kept. So your characters, different things that are playing a part in the game or acting and reacting to things. You've also got your stage, which is different backgrounds. So you can add in your own backgrounds, which we'll be doing in a bit. Then you've got the main area of the screen, which is where all the code goes. And the code in Scratch is building blocks. So on the left here, we've got all these blue blocks. Each one does a different thing. As you can see, they're all linked to motion. So the blocks are color coded. So you got the blue, dark blue ones are motion. So they affect how things move around the screen. You've got things that are looks in the purple category. So if they want to say something, or if they want to change how they look, you find that in looks. And there's sounds, events. So for example, if something's been clicked, so a user clicks something, if you press the start button, you use a block which is a green flag. Control if you want to repeat things, and so on. Then you've got your sensing blocks. So how does a character in the game sense that it's touching something else? Because it's not a real thing, it can't just sense it itself. You have to program it to be able to know when they are overlapping or when they're touching on the screen. Then there's your mathematical operators, variables, which you can set up yourself, and we'll be doing a bit of that later on. And that's all we need to really know. If you want to edit how a character looks, there's different tabs at the top. So you've got your costumes tab. You can edit it just like Microsoft Paint. You'll be able to edit how the character looks there, and any sounds, but we won't need sounds to start off with. So, first thing to make a maze game, we want to have a nice background, and then we'll draw our maze over the top of it. So to add a background, if you click on the stage down the bottom right, there's a choose a backdrop button. Now when you choose your backdrop, you want to pick something that's not too complex, doesn't have a wide variety of colours. Because when we're drawing the maze walls over the top, we don't want the walls to be the same colour as part of the background. I'll explain why in a bit. So I'm going to pick what would be a nice one. Let's see. I'll just do one with stars, I think, because I like space. Okay, so obviously the only colours in that background are maybe black, white, and a little bit of kind of like a dark purple at the bottom. So when I'm designing the walls, I'm going to pick a colour that doesn't already exist in the background. And the reason for that is later on, we'll be programming our sprites so that if they're touching that particular colour, they have to go back to the start. We'll make all the walls that colour. What we don't want is if you just touch part of the background and then you get put back to the start when you hadn't hit a wall of the maze. So what I've done is I've clicked on backdrops. So just like you can edit costumes, if you're on the stage, you can also edit backdrops. And the biggest tip for editing things in Scratch is whenever you want to edit something, click on convert to vector first. Make sure that it says convert to bitmap there, because it gives you much more flexibility when you're editing something. So it creates layers on top instead of just replacing the pixels themselves. So it's much easier to edit later on if you want to change something. So I'm going to make maybe some yellow walls. I have Star Wars inspired walls. And then if I select on the line, oh, I need to change the outline to the yellow. So you can edit the colours using the outline and different sliders here. Now if you want a tip, when you're making a line, it'll obviously just go wherever you want to draw it. If you hold down shift, it forces it to be horizontal, or if it's more closer to vertical, it'll make it vertical, or even diagonal. Okay, so if I'm holding down shift, you don't get that kind of movement. If you want a perfect lines, hold down shift and it'll make sure it's horizontal. If you want to edit it later on, use the mouse select option. You can click on the line and drag it so it goes all the way across. And then you just want to keep drawing lines and make a maze out of it. I'll make a pretty simple maze, but obviously you can make a harder one. What should I do here? Just be a simple 3-line maze. Okay, what you want to do next, now that we've got our maze set up, is I do not want this character. So in order to delete a sprite, underneath the game you'll see the sprite you want to delete. If you click on it and select it, it's the only one I've got right now. I can then click on the cross to delete it. So the cat's gone, and I want to add my own character. So if I want to add a new sprite from a library, I can select choose a sprite. So whenever you want to add a new sprite, there's different options. You can search for one which already exists in Scratch. You can paint your own one, design your own one. Click surprise or pick a random one, or you could even upload your own image or sprite you might have saved from somewhere else. I'm just going to pick one from the categories, from the list that already exists. And you can see there's different tabs at the top you can select from. So maybe fantasy, click on that, what do we have? So he looks like he suits space. Go with Pico. Now, the big problem we have is that Pico is much bigger than the maze. So I need to change the size, and the easiest way to do that is here underneath the screen it says size. So if you just delete that. So that 100% means that's the size he is at the moment, so I wanted it to be half the size. I put in 50. And maybe he's just about fits, but make it a bit smaller, maybe 30% of the size. That's better. I'm going to have Pico starting down here, and we'll have to make him get to the end of the maze in the top left. So we've designed what we need so far. Now we need to get Pico to move. So for this maze, and because everyone has iPads and touchscreen devices, and now that Scratch is compatible, I think instead of using the arrow keys, we'll make the character follow the mouse pointer. So even if you're using a laptop, you can still do the same thing, but if you're on a touchpad like an iPad, you could just make it follow your finger as you move it around the screen. So we need to give him instructions, we need to program him in order to actually follow the mouse pointer. So what we'll do is have an event, so when we start the game, so these blocks we drag them into this area in the middle. I can zoom in so everyone can see a bit easier. And it's when the green flag is clicked. So when we start the game, what happens? Now if I just click the green flag now, nothing's going to happen because I haven't put instructions afterwards connecting to this to tell it what to do once I press the green flag. So what I need to do is attach things like a jigsaw, and it'll complete them step by step. Now what I want him to do is to follow the mouse pointer. So if you're following something, you need to point towards it and then move. So I'll need a point towards mouse pointer, block in motion, and then I want move. Now the problem is if I only put that in, he moves once towards where the mouse was, but I want him to continuously repeat that, to keep pointing towards the mouse pointer and keep moving. So he's just going to carry on doing that forever, so that when he's moving around, he's always following the mouse. He's not just going to where it was up first and then moving. He keeps reacting to the movements of the mouse. So what we need is, in control, a forever loop. So if I put that around, you can see that blocks can fit inside a forever loop, and it just means it repeats the instructions inside it over and over again. So now I press the green flag, he moves around the screen. Now he's moving a bit fast, but he's constantly pointing towards the mouse and moving. So I might want to slow him down a bit so he doesn't move 10 steps every time he does the instruction. If we did 2, he now moves only 2 steps, points towards, moves 2 steps, and repeats. So he moves a lot slower. Maybe that's a bit too slow. Put 4. Now one problem we have is that every time I press the green flag, he starts from where he already is. I want him to go back to the start of the maze. So what I need to do is put him in the bottom left and give him a starting position. So to do that, you put him on the screen where you want them to go, and then you'll find a go-to block. Now you should see the numbers in here. So these are the coordinates. These are where he is on the screen. They should match up to the ones, now that I've selected him, underneath the screen. So if they match up, you know it's in the correct place. Now if I put that inside the loop, the problem is he'll constantly be going back and he'll be stuck in the same position. But we want him to do it at the start. So the first thing that happens, when I press the green flag, he goes back to the starting position. So if I stop the game there, if I press the green flag now, he's going to go back to the start and then start moving. So you saw he came down there every time he goes back. So now that I've got him moving, the problem we've got is that he can just go straight through the maze and through the walls. So we need to make it be able to sense the walls, and if it touches the walls, he gets forced to go back to the start. Or maybe you can have a game over. In this one, I'll just make him go back to the start. So to do that, we need it to be constantly checking, forever checking, am I touching the colour of the wall? So if we want to sense something, if touching is a sense, we need to go to the sensing blocks. And we will need touching colour. Now you might notice this is a very different shaped block to the ones we already have. So this actually needs to go inside another block. And it's a block we use called an if-then block. And it's a way of making a decision. If something is happening, if something is true, then do something in response to it. So if we're touching the colour of the walls, then do something, then go back to the start. So if you want an if-then block, you'll find it in control. So I can place this in the loop, so it's always pointing towards mouse pointer, moving, and checking, is it touching the walls? Am I touching colour? Now my walls aren't this colour. So what I need to do is click on it, and I could check the very fine colour to get exactly the same, or you can use the pen dropper tool. So if I click on this, it'll let you click on your maze. If I select the right colour there, you can see the outline of the circle tells you which colour you're on. So now it's checking if it's touching the colour of the maze. If it is, if I just did that in a moment, it is touching the wall, but we haven't told it what to do if it is touching the colour of the walls. We need to put something inside this if block. So if you go to, well, we could just copy the go-to block. If you want to copy something, I just drag that off for now, right click on this block and duplicate it. I put it in there. Now you'll see every time he touches the wall, he has to go back to the start. Okay. So what I think we'll do for this game is have a character chasing him around the maze. So we'll need to program a character that follows the maze around, that moves a little bit slower, but it means that you have to just about escape and get around the maze in time. So if we add a second character, so something that's going to be chasing, so what could be chasing? Something like a dog, or is there anything in space? Oh, a space dog, that'll be perfect. Very friendly looking dog, but that's fine. Again, the dog's a bit too big. I suppose it doesn't really matter how big the chaser is, but we'll make him a reasonable size. Now, what I need the dog to do is to actually walk around the maze. So automatically it will walk around the maze, constantly chasing your character. Now there's a really simple way of doing that. if I go to events, when the green flag is clicked, then maybe we'll make him wait a second. Or a few seconds maybe. I'll put 2 seconds in. And I want him to start as far to the left as I can. So if I drag him as far over as I can, just checking where does the character start. Okay. And then what we need to do, is, so if you notice there, because I clicked on the other character, it shows you the code for the other character. So each character has different instructions because we want them to behave differently. So you need to be careful when you're programming that you're programming in the right character. You don't want to be having the dog being chased by the character you're meant to be controlling. So what I'm going to do now is tell the dog first to go to the position where he is at the moment. Maybe we should do that before he waits 2 seconds. We wait 2 seconds. Then, so that's giving us a head start. We can start moving him around the screen. So we want him to first move here. So I place him where I want him to go. And then after I place him on the screen, I select a glide to block. So you'll see now that the numbers in here are different. So he's going to go to a different place on the screen, which is where I've put him. So he's going to glide there. So he's going to wait 2 seconds, then he glides to that position. Maybe a bit fast. We can change that in a minute. Then I want him to go here. So I put him in a new position. That changes the numbers in the blocks. I take a new glide. And then I keep repeating this. Then I want him to go over here. Take the next glide. So you always put him in position, then take a glide block, put him in position, take a glide block, and so on. So I keep doing this. A couple more blocks. And then we can finish here. So we're going to have to make sure that we get through the maze quickly enough. Now if I click this, there's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to run faster than the dog, because he's doing it in a certain amount of time. So if we check, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds he will complete the maze in. There's no way I can complete the maze in 7 seconds with Pico, with the main character. So in order to slow him down, maybe we can make these 2 seconds. So I change all these to 2. And now you'll see he moves a lot slower, still pretty fast, but I should hopefully be able to make it through the maze just about in 14 seconds. Maybe that was a bit too easy, but it's up to you guys how you want to edit the time to make it as difficult as possible, but still possible to complete. So we've got the dog working now. What we need to do is, what happens if the dog catches you? So what we can also do is get the dog to forever check, is it touching the character, or the character to keep checking, just like the wall, am I touching the dog? So again, I want another if block. So it's in control, I'm making a decision. If something is true, then I do something. So if this time touching, instead of the color, if touching dot. So the dog is called dot. So I need a sensing block, and this time the top one says touching mouse pointer, but you can change it and it'll have a list of all the characters or even the edge of the screen. If touching dot. When you're placing these blocks in, if you notice, if I put it there, it doesn't fit into the block. You need to drag it to the left side, the block goes in and the block around it lights up. Okay, so what do we do if touching the dog? Maybe we can make it say game over, or the character says something. So I can make Pico say something like, oh no, Obviously you can do what you want. So I've got a say block which is in Lux. And the problem I've got, which I should have thought of before, is that when I start the game, it's already touching the dog, so it's going to say oh no at the start. So what I need to do is edit this code, place him a bit further along, so around here, and take a different go-to block that is in the same block but with different values, and now he's going to start a bit further over. So he's not touching the dog at the start, and you can run away from the dog. So this game is going to be difficult. If you touch that wall, there's no way you can get to the end of the maze now without touching the dog, so you kind of ruined it for yourself. So we've got our character moving, we've got our dog running through the maze after you, but now we need to have something at the end of the maze so that if we reach it, we win. So what does the character like to get? So we'll have a new sprite, a new character. It can just be an object that if it touches it, you win the game. What was in space again? Anything good in space? Maybe he has to get to his rocket. So we'll put a rocket in there, it's a bit too big. Again, if you want to change the size of something, change the number underneath the screen, I'll put a rocket there. So now I'm trying to get to the rocket. Now, if I touch the rocket, I need to have it do something. So I need to have it sensing, have I touched the rocket yet? Constantly checking. So again, we just want to put inside a forever loop. So after it's moved, after it's pointed, it's moved, and then it checks, is it touching the color of the wall? Is it touching the dog? We need to check, is it touching the rocket? And it does this so fast that you wouldn't even notice it's doing them all at the same. It seems like it's doing them all at the same time. So we'll put in an if then, and exactly the same as if touching dot. I can even just duplicate that block by right clicking on it and clicking duplicate and changing it to if touching rocket ship, because that's the name of my sprite, rocket ship. And then I could maybe say, I don't know, what shall I say, yippee. I've never written yippee before, but that'll do. That's what Pika would say. So now we've done that, the last thing we'll do, if we touch the rocket, we want the game to stop. And there's a simple way to do that, is you just find in control the stop all block. So after, if it touches the rocket ship, then say yippee and stop all. And now, an important stage is to test the game. So if I, oh, oof, that was close. If I actually get through the maze, when I touch the rocket ship, right, so you might not have noticed there's a problem. He said yippee, he didn't say yippee, and that's because the stop block is immediately after it. There wasn't enough time for it to display it on the screen. So how can we fix that? Well, we can have maybe a wait block, or we can make him say it for a certain amount of time. So instead of just say, you can also do say for a certain amount of time. So I'm going to delete that block by putting it back into where I got the others from. So if I say yippee for 1 second, because the dog is chasing us, time is of the essence, then we can just put a stop all block and try again. Oop, I hit the wall there, I'm going to make it just about. Now this time, if you have a look at the game, you should see he say yippee for 1 second, and hopefully that's enough time, and it stops. Good. So that's how you make a maze game. Obviously you can adapt any of the code. If you wanted to make the dog move faster or slower, you change how many seconds it's gliding for. If you wanted to add some other sprites that move around in different parts you have to avoid, you can easily do that. Just put the if touching, go back to the start kind of thing. And that's it. So that's how you make a maze game in Scratch.